So you're thinking about buying new construction. You're having a world of a tough time trying to buy just a home in general here in San Diego. Today we're going to be talking about the top pros and cons of buying new construction here in San Diego, and we're going to get after it for right now. What's up, amazing people? I am Liz Lepore here with the Mortgage Liz team located out of San Diego, California. And if you're looking for the channel that's talking about everything you want to know about what it's like to eat, live, sleep, and play here in San Diego, then this is a channel for you. You definitely want to click that subscribe button and tap that little bell so you're reminded every single time I release a new video. Because honestly, I do them every single week. And honestly, my team and I are getting phone calls every single day with people just like you thinking about making that move to somewhere in San Diego, whether it's in the inland or on the coastal. If you're thinking about making that move, you definitely want to reach out to us. Give us a call, send us a text, or an email, whatever is easiest for you. We got your back when moving to San Diego. Now, let's get after the pros and cons as to why, or maybe why not, to buy new construction. Okay, so honestly, there is so much new construction happening, but there is not as much new construction happening as you would expect. So just as much as homes are selling literally like hotcakes right now, new construction is going just as fast because I'm sure you're aware lumber prices are up. And because they're up, it is a little bit harder for new construction to continue building even more. And it just cost of living in general when it comes to San Diego is going to be a bit higher. So new construction, yes, you're going to be finding that pretty, already done, set up home, kind of being able to get your exact choices of what you want in that kitchen or that extra bedroom. Or maybe even like pick out that flooring if you end up getting there a little bit early. But here in San Diego, there is actually over 91 communities in new construction being built right now. Just in Escondido alone, there's actually 3 different communities that we're going to be talking about here in the near future. Just released a video talking about Eden Crest here in Escondido, and then we're going to be diving up to Valley Center and of course in San Marcos and on the coast, because also there's even more down south into Chula Vista. So there's a lot of new construction that's being built, and honestly a lot of the time right now that's kind of the way to be able to get your offer accepted. You may not get the closing costs when it comes to getting that paid off for yourself, but it gets you into being able to get your offer accepted, though therefore finding your first home. And because it ends up being a little bit harder when it comes to new construction, meaning it's going to take longer. So today it may take you, let's say a couple weeks, maybe say 30 days to be able to find a new build right now to figure out which community that you want to live in when it comes to new construction. And then you got to wait about 3 to 6 months for them to actually build the home. Well, when you look at buying a regular home that's being sold by a person, in that case, sometimes you may actually end up finding that it may only take you about 15 days to 30 days to be able to get into that home. And then you have your regular escrow period, which is about 30 days. And so you're looking at maybe like 60 days versus closer to like 6 to 8 months. So one of the biggest things that comes into like the cons aspect is the time frame. How quickly do you want to be able to move into your home? If you're looking for a specific neighborhood because you want that specific school district, well, in some cases you may not want to have that new construction, mainly because you have to have that property address to be able to give to the school so that way you can enroll your kids. Sometimes it may or may not work. Then on that same con, when it comes to being able to register your kid, you also end up deciding where in that new construction that you want to live. So do you want to live closer to that school when it comes to the new construction, because you are going to have more availability, more decisions to be able to make when it comes to which home you actually want. Of course, there are many different floor plans when it comes to new construction, so you could go anywhere between 3 floor plans that are ranging between 3,700 square feet to 4,600 square feet. And of course, the more the square footage, the higher the cost. And just depending on which school district you're going to come into, it may be relative. It may be that the school that you're coming into may not be the one that the most makes sense. So continuing on our pros and cons when it comes to new construction, let's go on to the next one. So of course, on our first pro, it's going to be that you get to pick whatever you want. So when it comes to brand new, technically you can start picking out the flooring, you can start picking out the kitchen, maybe you want white cabinets, maybe you want that extra room for your daughter or for that playroom. things like that. When it comes to homes that are already built, like that are being sold by a person, then at that point you're really not going to be able to pick, that new finishing. When it comes to that kitchen, you're not going to typically be able to pick out the new flooring, because right now in this market, they're not making any adjustments. So you're not going to have a seller that's going to come back and go, hey, yes, I'm going to put that new flooring in. Sadly, that is just not the case right now. And so when it comes to new construction, at least this way you'll be able to pick out the flooring. Maybe you'll pick out the paint, because you have to do the paint, obviously. They're only going to give you nice white walls. They're most likely not going to do that extra painting when it comes along with it. So you do walk in and you got basically kind of a clean slate, and you get to choose everything you want. So with the brand new comes those extra amenities where you get to get those upgraded stuff when it comes to the kitchens and then the rooms. But then on that same pro comes the con. So technically, yes, you get all the brand new stuff and you get the brand new appliances and things like that. However, you will find that some new construction are actually requiring a larger deposit just to have those extra amenities. So let's say, for example, you want that brand new flooring. Well, the flooring that comes with the new construction, maybe you don't need an extra deposit. Well, you want that extra top of the line flooring in your home. Well, now you have to put another deposit on that. So let's put this in math perspective. So let's say you buy a home and it's $700,000. $700,000, they're typically right now in many communities are asking for a 3% deposit. $700,000, 3%, that's $21,000. So that's going to be typically either your down payment or a portion of your down payment. Now we look at the extra amenities. So let's say you want to put in that top of the line flooring. Well, that top of the line flooring, maybe it's going to cost you another $20,000. Well, they're going to ask for a percentage of that $20,000 in addition to your 3% deposit. So 3% was $21,000. Flooring is $20,000. Let's say they ask for 50% of that deposit for the flooring. Well, then that's $10,000. Now you're looking at $21,000 plus 10. Now you're looking at $31,000 that you're going to require to be able to just get started and not really even get to the closing table. With that also being said, when it comes to that con, odds are if you're going to be putting in that extra flooring for the extra $20,000, you're not going to be walking away. And that portion of that money that you're putting, those $10,000, is going to go to the overall price. So it doesn't mean that it's gone forever. It does actually go towards your regular portion of either your down payment or maybe towards your closing costs. So there is, that benefit when it comes to that. So on to our next pro, and that's going to be that you get to customize your home, the exterior and the interior. So we were just diving in a little bit about the interior when it comes to the flooring and then the extra appliances that are just kind of those upgrades. But then you can also even decide the exterior. So let's say, for example, there's 3 different models and all the 3 different models end up having different colors. Well, maybe for my case, when I first bought my new construction back in 2007, I like the perfect kind of like the white and then the yellow. That was like the color that I really liked. Yes, there was other one-story homes, but that was like my cup of tea. That is really what I liked. And so because there was multiple one-story homes, I got to pick the one I liked on the exterior. That's kind of like the benefit, the bonus of being able to get new construction, is that you end up being able to choose the one that you really want, the one that you want to stay with for a really long time. Yes, there are a whole bunch of other amenities when it comes to the interior, but I also think about the exterior when it comes to the stuff that I really want. And so when it comes to the exterior of the colors and things like that, a lot of the communities that are being built right now do have HOAs. So along with that exterior and the pro is going to come a con. So once you have the exterior is already set up, let's say it's in that white, it's in that yellow, whatever the colors may be for that community, you are going to need approval to be able to make those changes to a different color. So on the con is that once you got it, that's it. You're most likely not going to be making any changes when it comes to the colors. So if you're going to repaint your house later on, it's going to be to the color of which was already approved by the HOA, Homeowner Association, before you can make any changes. So they're going to dictate yes or no. And they're going to say, nope, you can't make the changes regardless if this is your mortgage, your house, your lot, your land, all of that stuff. Doesn't matter. You live in a community and the community is governed by HOA regulations, your CC&Rs, and because of that, they are going to dictate whether you can or cannot. That also comes in the exterior of the other con, is that they can also dictate what you put in your backyard. So why? If you look at the backyard, if my backyard, I end up paying for the regular monthly payments, I pay for the mortgage. Again, you're back to that HOA. They can technically determine whether they want you to have that shed in your backyard, even though you're the one that's paying the mortgage. So along with the con of being able to, have your backyard and have that shed that you can't have on an HOA community, that's where the pro comes in, to be able to go out to like the not new build, to the homes that are reselling, but just by a regular person, because then you can pick out whatever you want and you can put whatever you want in the front, whatever you want in the back. But that goes back to like the pros as to why you want to be able to own in an HOA community, because all that stuff is governed. So even though you have the issues of where sometimes you may end up having some people, let's say, go back and then have cars that are not maintained, they put them out on the road, things like that. That's what the HOA is there for. They end up actually making sure that the community stays beautiful. So like I said, the exterior and interior, it's a pro and a con. We could go down a rabbit hole when it comes to this, because it's amazing to be able to see the beautiful community, but it kind of sucks to be able to not change anything. I know that when I was trying to build my pool and things like that, I needed everybody's approval. I needed to be able to make sure that they were going to allow me to do every single thing. And then to be able to paint the gate. Yes, I'm serious. Paint the gate. It has to be a specific color. So as much as that is a pain in the butt and it's a con, because why do I care what the HOA says about the paint of my gate, because I'm paying for it? It's still a regulation that I got to follow. So either I want to get fined $100 or I'm just going to paint it the color that they said so. So it's stuff like that that you want to make sure that you're aware of, that it is a pro, but there's cons that come along with it. So on to our next pro and con, and that's going to be limited options. So when it comes to limited options, technically it could be pretty much a pro in most cases, just because you're being given just a smaller amount of options, meaning like pick white or pick yellow when it comes to your colors of the interior. But then on the flip side, maybe what if you want to paint it orange? Well, now you have that con. You want to make sure that you're aware that in this case, it also keeps you from going down a rabbit hole of a whole bunch of different faucets or different handles and things like that. I know that when I was doing my renovation to my home, there is so many different handles that you can choose from. So sometimes you just want a couple of choices to like limit you down to the options, vice versa having to look at every single thing under the sun, which makes it a lot harder. So when it looks at the limiting options, typically a builder was going to tell you a couple different options when it comes to either a stove or the granite, or maybe they're having different flooring, things like that. They're going to give you just a couple options, maybe two, maybe three. But if you want to spend that extra money, extra dollar, then of course that's where you're going to end up going back into the con, where it's going to start adding up to more than what you were anticipating. You started at the middle 700s, and you may end up at the middle 800s because of all the extra amenities and all the extra options that you're adding. So that's why I say that in some cases it actually will work out as a pro, to make sure that you stay within, per se, that box and you're not spending too much money. As well, on the limiting options, you're going to end up finding that as the con, you're going to end up maybe not liking their options. I know that when I was first going into new construction and we were first finding our home back in 2007, my husband at that time, fiance, did not like any of the other new constructions at that time. I mean, like within literally less than a mile, there was 4 new constructions happening. One on El Norte, and then on the corner of Washington, over by East Valley, then the next one over by Valley Center, and then there was another one up the road on Valley Center, and then there was some more on over by the communities. He didn't like any of them. We went down every single one, and he got to the point where he decided that the one he had to have was the one that had the HOA and had the Melrose. And so sometimes, regardless about what the options are that they're giving you, it's the community or it's the way that the layout is done that is really going to supersede where you really want to live. And so don't look at the limiting options such as a negative aspect. In some cases, it'll help you, so that way you don't have to have so many options and you can just pick one. And then on the flip side, sort of kind of the pro is that it'll also decide whether you want to live there. Maybe that HOA that you're looking at, or maybe that additional taxes that you're looking at, may not be the way that you want to live. Maybe you want to look at a different community. So you definitely want to look at the multiple options that you do have, or the limiting options that you're being given depending on that builder. So a big con is going to be upgrades. So one would think that that's a pro. Not really. So yes, you can do a lot of upgrades, and we've been talking about that in pros as to being able to upgrade a lot of different amenities. However, the upgrades can get really costly. I mean, just for the flooring, when we first did our home, it was $20,000 to $25,000 just for flooring. And we were just doing regular wood floors, and then we did carpets in the rooms. And so when we look at the expense, it can get even more costly when you start adding that to the top payment. And then you look at how this actually affects your monthly payment. So let's say, for example, that you had $30,000 in upgrades to your home. $30,000 in upgrades is going to range about $150 on a monthly payment. Well, let's say, for example, that you have $90,000 in upgrades. And now you're going to be looking at a monthly payment closer to about $2,500 at $2,450 for $90,000 in upgrades. Wow. So in some cases, it may not be that big a deal, but most situations, you're looking at upgrades for $90,000. Homes that are in new construction can get really costly in general in price. You're looking at, per se, in Escondido right now, you're looking at new construction that's going to cost you anywhere between the high $700s to the high $800,000 range. So mortgage payments at that point are going to be in the $4,000 bracket. So $4,000 to this additional $500, now you're looking at about $4,500 to close to about $5,000 for all of those extra new construction amenities, all of those new upgrades that you were looking at. So you want to make sure that before you decide that you want to do all of those upgrades, you payment calculate how much it's actually going to come out to. So how much are you actually going to be paying out every single month because you decided to do $30,000 in upgrades or $90,000 in upgrades. So another pro is going to be energy efficiency. So a lot of homes nowadays, you're going to be finding that they, one, typically come with solar, and then two, you end up even sometimes finding that the builder ends up paying for that solar. So it may actually end up benefiting you to be able to get the solar. You want to make sure though that before you jump in and do that solar, that you actually make sure that those are good panels, number one, and then number two, that they're going to be sufficient enough to kind of wipe out your bill when it comes to the actual gas and electric. Because in most cases, people end up doing solar and they don't overbuild, meaning that they could have used an additional 10 panels, and because they didn't get the additional 10 panels, then they end up actually still making a monthly payment over to SDG&E, San Diego Gas and Electric, because they still are spending more on a monthly basis when it comes to gas and electric, and it was not wiped out by the solar. On the other aspect, you're going to be finding a lot of homes that already have all the extra efficiency. So maybe the newer water heater, the tankless water heater, energy efficiency, washer and dryer, and the dishwasher, things like that. So that may definitely end up benefiting you. I know that in general, our energy efficiency in our home is really important, mainly because we have two girls, and with my two girls, they use up all the hot water. And so one of the things that we're definitely going to be looking into here in the near future is going to be a tankless water heater. You may end up finding that some of the new construction will end up giving you options for a tankless water heater. And if that's an option, that's definitely something of an upgrade you're definitely going to want to take. So just a little bit food for thought. So a big con when it comes to new construction is that you honestly don't have a lot of room for negotiation. When it comes to you buying a home from a new builder or just a builder in general, you're going to end up seeing that what the price is, that's what it is. So let's say, for example, price is $765,100. Then you're going to be buying it for $765,100. That's just going to be the price. There is going to be no negotiation going downwards. What you see is what you get. And in most cases, what you see is lower than what you're actually going to be paying for. Because don't forget about all those amenities and all those upgrades that we've been talking about, that is going to be added on top. The price that you see out on the side of the road is not going to be the price that you're paying for. There's always that sign that says starting from the low 700s. I can assure you, you will not finish at the low 700s. So it's really important to see that what the final amount is going to be, and that the payment that you calculate, the payment that you're going to be comfortable with, is going to be the final amount. So if you're going to do those $30,000 in upgrades, your final price based off of $765,100 plus $30,000 is going to be $795,100. So is that in a comfortable range? Maybe it is, maybe it's not. But you got to make sure that the actual negotiation, there's not going to be a lot of it. And so you have to make sure that you are comfortable with the final amount, final sales price, with the minimal negotiation that's actually happening. So another really big pro is that you're probably not going to have a lot of maintenance problems within the first, let's say, 3 to 5 years. I can assure you it's not always going to be, up and happy day when you don't have to fix anything. It will end up breaking just like anything else. We have owned our home here in Escondido for about 12 years now, and now we are switching out to our second washer and dryer, our second dishwasher. We have not had to, actually I take that back, we have had to switch out our water heater once. The next time that we switch it out, it's going to be a tankless water heater. We have had to switch out our air conditioner, but that's now about 10 years down the road. So a lot of the time you're not going to find, like 3 to 5 years, you're not going to be really fixing anything. So the home warranty, if you do end up with a home warranty at the end of the day, when you do end up closing, odds are you're probably not going to use it. However, with that, you're going to have additional costs. So the cost is the con. So even though you're not going to have to fix anything, you are definitely going to have to buy stuff, because you're going to be given a blank slate, white walls, nothing else. And so odds are you want to paint, you still have to do your backyard. A lot of new construction homes, we forget that the backyard is typically not done. Front yard is typically done. They just put some basic grass or things like that. In some cases, in some new constructions, that's not done. In some cases, you actually may find that the front yard and the backyard you have to take care of. When we first bought our home for new construction, they took care of the new front yard, and that was fine. Since then, we have ripped it out. We've got a new updated front yard, but in the backyard, that was not done. And so when we first bought our home, that took forever to get. Why? Because it gets really costly. When you start getting contractors and get all of that money start flowing out, you realize that grass is not as cheap and least expensive than you originally thought. And you don't realize that those flowers that were $1 start to add up. And then that brick that you saw that was maybe 60 cents, well, now you need 700 pounds of it. It gets really expensive. So on that pro, yes, you're not going to have to fix a lot of stuff in the first 3 to 5 years, but you are going to have to update things, and they're going to have regulations in an HOA, in a new construction. They're going to require you to make sure that you have everything done. So whether it's the front and the backyard completed, because they already finished the front yard, so now you only got to do the backyard, or maybe they didn't do the front yard, so now you got to do the front and the backyard. And if that's the case, they're going to give you time frames. So when we bought our home, they gave us 6 months to finish the front yard, and then they gave us 12 months to finish the backyard. And then once that happened, you had to get HOA approval. So first, you need HOA approval to have them allow you to put anything on your lawn. So that is a total con, because yes, technically speaking, you can't put whatever you want on the front lawn, but on the flip side, you also end up with a really beautiful community because everybody else has to follow the same regulations. And then once you end up putting in that paperwork, they approve your front yard, now you can start the work. Well, now you got to do the backyard. Backyard, same deal. You got to make sure that the HOA community is going to approve what you're doing in the backyard. So if you want to put, a batting cages in the backyard, they need to confirm it. And so unfortunately, here in our community, I can't put a batting cage. And furthermore, I don't even have the room for a batting cage. But if I could, I would. So stuff like that. So you want to make sure that when you're buying new construction, that you look at everything around it. You also look at whether you're allowed to have maybe specific dogs. Those are those regulations that come in with the HOA that may not be what you want. And maybe there's a specific dog that you already have. Maybe you have a chow chow, or maybe they don't like, golden retrievers or whatever the case may be. Things like that will end up maybe deferring you from buying that new construction. So before you put your 3% deposit of those $21,000 for that $700,000 home, you make sure that you are completely satisfied, because most likely you put those 3% deposit, they're not going to give it back to you if you decided that you don't like some of their rules and regulations. So you want to make sure that you definitely know what you're signing for. And that comes into the next con, which is the actual contracts are really long. Okay, so Contracts for new construction. I had a client just recently that went into a new construction. His contract was 128 pages long.
Wow.
128 pages. Absolutely bananas. He literally decided to just go down the line and electronically sign every single one. The problem with that was that when he decided that he was not really interested in the home anymore and that he had to wait because his business was being affected, well, now he had already electronically signed all the documents. What he didn't realize was that he had signed a non-contingent plan, which meant that if he backed out, the $50,000 went straight to the builder. So as a big con when it comes to new construction is that those contracts are really long. And before you sign on that dotted line, whether it's electronic or whether it's with a regular pen, you definitely want to make sure that you have done your research, done your homework. So before you make that final decision, you definitely want to reach out to us. You want to make sure that you give us a call, send us a text, or an email, whatever is easiest for you. Because honestly, new construction, it's its own animal. There is a lot going on when it comes to new construction. And depending on whether the pros outweigh the cons, or depending on whether you decide which community is best for you, or maybe your business is being affected and now you need to be able to get out of this contract, you're definitely going to want somebody to have your back when getting to that point. Or making that decision because maybe those $90,000 are not as important when it looks at the monthly payment. That's almost $500 a month. So when you're ready, we're ready to help you. Make sure that you give us a call, send us a text or an email, whatever is easiest for you. And don't forget, every single week we release new videos talking about everything of what it's like to eat, live, sleep, and play here in San Diego. And until next time, make sure that you click that subscribe button, tap that little bell so you're reminded every single time we release a new video. And until next time, don't forget, see you later.